Hey, what's going on everybody? Chad here from Greyscalegorilla, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this cool glass sculpture thing from beginning to end. We're going to do a little volume meshing, we're going to dive into the lighting, some area light maps work, and finish it all off in Octane. And you can follow along from beginning to end, should be no problem, but if you're a Greyscalegorilla Plus member, which you should be, you'll be able to get these scene files and play with them yourself and check it out. So let's just jump right in. All right, so here we are in Cinema 4D, and we're going to get going with our orb glass sculpture thingy. So the first thing I'll do is grab a sphere and make sure that we set that segment up pretty high. So I'm going to set it to like 90. We'll leave the radius at 100, that's fine. And we'll rename this one emitter, because this is what we're going to be emitting our orbs from. So let's call that one emitter. And I'm going to hit Control-C, Control-V, copy this one down. We'll name this one orbs, and we'll change its radius to 90. Actually, we'll change it to 50, make it a little bit smaller. So with orb selected, let's go ahead and hold down Alt and grab a MoGraph cloner, which is going to make the orbs a child of the cloner. And we'll change this cloner type to object and drag our emitter onto our object area here. Boom, there we go. And we're all set. Let's just rename this one really quick. Orb cloner. There we go. Oh, renamed all nice. Always rename. The quick tip there. So let's throw a MoGraph effector random. And with the random, let's turn off position, turn on scale, and turn on uniform scale, and set this to 0.5. Okay. So here we go. We've got our Orby thing all ready to go. We're ready to start using our volume builder tools to get this working. So let's jump into that part of it. Okay, so with the orb and the emitter selected, I'm holding down Alt, and let's grab Volume Builder, and boom. Oop, actually it made two different volume builders, but we'll just drag that emitter up into this top one here. Get rid of that one. There we go. And now you can see it's turned into this like video game voxel kind of pixelated thing. And these are volumes, so if you haven't checked out the Volume Builder, Volume Mesher, check out some videos that we have. We've talked a bit about this feature. It's really nice for this sort of thing. So for now, I'll leave the voxel size. Actually, I'll bring it down a little bit so we can see everything a little bit better. I'll bring it down to 5, which is kind of a manageable voxel size where we still have some good interactivity going for this. So, okay, we've got our orb cloner, our orb emitter. And we might want to throw down an SDF smooth on this, and we'll just kind of leave this as default. And we might bring the strength down maybe to like 50%, something like that. And that feels pretty good in terms of our ability to smooth it. Now we're ready to mesh this out. So let's grab a volume mesher, and we'll throw this. We'll organize our scene in a second, but we're not really going to worry about it too much right now. Let's grab our volume builder, make it a child of volume mesher, and immediately we're going to get some nice meshing happening with our volume. But you can see we've got kind of a low voxel size, so we're getting a very generalized, kind of smoothed out version of our orbs, and we don't want that. So we'll change our voxel size to 1. And that's going to give us a much tighter kind of look that we're after here. Go ahead and look at that. This is more along the lines of what I want. Okay, so we're going to then generate a mesh from this, and then we're going to cut it out of itself. And I know that sounds weird, but it'll make sense in a second. So we need to get a mesh off of this really quickly. So I'm just going to right-click the volume mesher, and we're going to say current state to object, and it's going to bake out the current state of this mesher into its own piece of geometry. Here it is right here. So we'll call this baked volume. And for the baked volume, let's go ahead and turn off both of these guys, just so we can just see this baked volume only. And let's throw a displacer on this baked volume. And we'll set this displacer, if I could talk, over to color. And we'll make the color black. And what this is going to do is it's going to be pushing this displacer. It's going to be displacing the entire mesh off of its normals. So it's kind of extreme right now. We're getting a little bit of pulling right there, but this will make sense in a second. We're not going to worry too much about this weirdness down here. All right, with our baked volume ready to go, let's go ahead and toss this into our volume builder, and we're going to throw it at the top of this list. So now we've got our list here. If we look at the volume builder, we can kind of see what's going on in this list right here. We've got our orb cloner, which is just a child, and it's just, emitting its volumes. Actually, let's turn these back on a little bit easier to see. Whoops. And there we go. And then it's got our emitter joining in there too, so it's unionizing. Unionizing? Sure. It's it's getting organized. And it's basically putting a volume on these two objects and putting them together in union. And then we have our smooth, which we don't want to happen here. We want our smooth to happen at the very end. And our baked volume, which we just baked out and we offset its normals a bit, we want to subtract that. So if I hit subtract on this, you're going to be like, well, why would you do that? And if we jump into like a side view here, you can see we're giving the glass thickness. We're giving the glass the ability to have a little bit of that thickness so that it's going to look a little more interesting in the refractions, because otherwise it's just going to be a solid piece of glass, and we don't want that. We want there to be a little bit of thickness. And of course, we can always take this, this displacer here that we have and just change the amount it's displacing. If we want like thinner glass, we could change this to 5, and that's going to thin that glass out. So maybe we want this to be around like 9, something like this. We want it to be sort of thick. And that smoothing is going to take care of any of that weirdness that we had in when we were looking at it alone, that mesher with that weirdness with the polys. The smooth will take care of that. Okay, so we've got a pretty good thing going here. Our mesher is still kind of, or our volume builder rather, voxel size is pretty good. I might smooth this out just a little bit more. Let's see what it looks like with 2 iterations of smoothing. It might just like destroy any sort of definition between these orbs. I don't know. Actually, it didn't do too much. It looks okay. We bring this now up to like 100, the strength. I'm going to guess that it's going to average it out a little bit more. This isn't too bad. I think this is probably fine, because I'm gonna say I'm probably gonna like what it's doing to the interior a lot. It's doing some nice stuff there. And of course, you know, if you want to get fancy with it, you could throw a smooth modifier into this baked. Like I can't guarantee this is going to work, but we're going to try it. So if we grab a relax or a smoothing rather, and drop that underneath our displacer, we're just going to see what this does. This might work. It might not work. So if we change the iterations of this smoothing to like 20. Just trying to see if I can get a little bit more of a relaxed inner. There we go. That's better. Let's see what 40 looks like. I think it might be kind of interesting, but it might not work. We're just going to try it, experiment. There we go. Now we're getting a little bit more of a variation. It's looking a little bit better. I think I might actually bring this displacement back up to 10. Give it a little bit more thickness. Cool. All right. Now we've got something we can work with here. All right, let's jump back out. Yeah, this is feeling good. Okay, so in the next thing I want to do is maybe cut out some areas of this to make it feel a little bit more interesting. Like we might want some holes in the top of these like larger kind of globule pieces. And there's a couple different ways you could do that. And for right now, I'm going to pull this back out of the volume mesher just so we have a little bit more speed. And I'll bring the voxel size to like 3. Just so that we can, I guess, just have a better view, not have to worry about it taking forever. Oh, interesting. So it kind of went away there. Wonder if our smooth, yeah, sometimes I have some issues with the smooth, so just got to like, you know, kick the tires a little bit, see what's going on. All right, I want to throw some holes into this geo. So let's go ahead and figure out how we want to do that. I'm probably going to do it. Oh, weird. All right, so we have some holes in this right there, and I can tell that I'm going to need to take this smoothing and knock it way down because it's probably over smoothing those corners. Yep, that's exactly what was happening. Cool. So I just brought the smoothing down, and just to be safe, I might bring it down a little bit more. All right, cool. So I think we're good, and let's just kind of experiment here and play around. I'm going to grab a cylinder, and let's rotate the cylinder like this direction here. And move it out. And we're just going to position this to a place where I think it looks cool. Coming off of this orb right here. Going to do this, and we'll bring that down. And I mean, you could do this with another cloner, but there's something kind of nice about doing it by hand and making like decisions on where these go and what it should look like. So let's go ahead and take that guy. It looks pretty good right there. Let's also bring his rotation segment's way up. And let's toss him into our volume builder. And our volume builder will set him to subtract. Cool. So now we're getting a cool view of the inside of our orb here. And you can see all that work that we were doing cutting out the inside. It's a bit more visible now. All right, that looks pretty good. I might make the radius a little bit smaller. Something like that. Feels pretty good. All right. And now we're just going to duplicate this cylinder around and find some other places to put it. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here and duplicate this cylinder around and find some cool spots, and we'll come back. Okay, so we duplicated our cylinders around and made some creative choices on where some of these holes might be. And it's looking pretty good. Looking pretty dang cool. Okay, so now we're ready to throw this back up into our volume mesher. Let's do that, and we'll wait for it to calculate. Down here in the corner, you can see the progress. And that looks pretty good. We got a little bit of jagginess happening here. So the way that I'm going to fix that is just bring my voxel size to like 0.75 and really throw a lot more geometry at this. And we'll wait for that to calculate. Did it calculate? Can't tell. No, I guess it didn't. Let's try 0.5. All right, there we go. We got quite a bit more mesh now to deal with. All right, so we've got it looking pretty good, looking pretty dang cool to me. The thickness looks good. Everything's looking pretty good. So what I like to do is I like to actually save this scene as a completely separate scene. And I'm just going to clean this up a little bit in my structure that I like to use. So I'm going to throw my MoGraph, throw our random down here under effectors and make sure it's part of the same layer. Just doing some housekeeping here. This is going to be a foreground object, so we'll stick it in there, and we'll go ahead and give everything the same layer. So I'm just painting this layer down. Everything, boom, there we go. Okay, so now we're all cleaned up, and what I'll usually do is save this out as like a building scene, like a scene that I would come back to remake this or do something different with it. We're not actually going to be building out our entire set with this scene. This is going to be like an asset scene. So let's take our volume mesher and go ahead and do a current state to object on this. And this is the mesh that we're going to bring into our lighting scene and start to build out everything that we need to make. Now we can turn off this stuff just to make everything go a little faster. And let's grab that volume mesher, and we're going to name this Orb Baked. So this is the mesh that we're going to bring into our lighting scene and start to light up and do all our fun stuff with it. So, okay, let's jump into that section. Okay, so here we have our fresh scene. We've got our meshed volume in here ready to go, and we're ready to start setting up our look dev scene. The first thing I like to do is sort of decide what scale I'm working in, and that's really important to make that decision early on so that you're not struggling to try to get some sort of realistic scale going later on. So doing it right off the bat is a good idea. So I'm going to say that this sculpture is like maybe a foot, maybe a little bit smaller. Maybe it's like 10 inches, 10 inches by 10 inches. So I'm going to drop a cube down. And let's just change the size of this cube. And I just realized this not too long ago that you can actually type in 10 IN for inches, and it's going to convert that for you right here in this number field. So 25.4 is about the, let's just say 25 to make it easier. Say 25 centimeters. So now we're just going to scale this orb down. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to grab the glass orb and I'm going to go over to my axes, or sorry, my coordinates, and look at the size just so I can make sure that I'm going to be making this thing the right size. Cool. Let's move this down a little bit further. Really want it to be about 25 inches on the longest part, or 25 centimeters rather. All right, that looks pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is sort of raise this. It's going to be on that cool like pedestal, like artsy kind of thing. So let's just build a quick cylinder, and we'll make this one a little bit, maybe this one's like 30 and it's going to be like 60 centimeters high, and that's going to be we're going to need to be half that. So it's got to be like 14, something like this. And I'm going to put this right at the center. So it's just going to touch the 0 point there, and then we'll raise our sculpture up into the air a little bit. I want it to be kind of floating off of that. And we'll raise our segments up to like 60 or something high like that. And let's just jump in here so we can kind of see what we've got going on. And let's change our caps to fillet, and we'll change this to pretty tight, maybe not that tight, maybe like 0.15. I just want a little bit of a corner there. It's just going to look more interesting. And let's just, yeah, that feels pretty good. Okay, cool. So now I think I'm ready to like bring in a camera and start to figure out what I want this to look like. I am going to be working in a square aspect ratio, so I'm going to jump into my render settings, and we're going to change this to Octane. So we're not going to touch any of this just yet, but you can see I've got some render presets down here that set up the aspect ratio that I want. So let's just go ahead and choose that one. And let's go ahead and drop a camera in, see what we got cooking. Let's drop a camera in, boom. I'm going to zero out the camera. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. Right click, right click, right click, because I'm lazy. And I like to work this way. I like to work with my subject center and the camera always facing in on it from a front. And this is where I start to think about what kind of lens I want to use and what's going to make the most sense for my subject matter. So if I drop my camera into my cams null here, and let's go ahead and look through it, I can't really tell what's going on because the edge of the frame is not really showing me the edge of the frame. I have a nifty little script that I wrote that, turns on some letterboxing, but you can do that pretty easily just by hitting, I believe it's going to be Alt V and HUD, or wait, no, it's going to be Save Frames. You can do it right in there as well, but I just have a nice little script. And Plus members, let me know if you want to get these scripts. I'll hook you up. I want to center this on our orb. So there's a couple different ways I could do that. And the easiest way that I'm going to do it is just grab a null, and we're going to make this a look at. And I'm just going to drag this right to the center. So with my camera selected, Shift C to bring up the commander, and we're going to grab a target tag. There we go. With the target tag selected, grab the null that we just made, put it in the target object. We're going to call this cam look at, and put that also in our cams, make sure it's in that layer. And now I can kind of like figure out my camera angle. I kind of want this to be like this, but we need to figure out our lens. Our lens is a very important choice that we need to make right now because we're sort of at the beginning of laying this out, and we want to make sure that we're making the right choice. So I'm going to put a pretty long lens on this thing because I want it to feel a bit flattened out and a little bit more photographic. So I'm going to choose. Now you may have heard me, talk about the field focal length and the proper way to get focal length on a different aspect ratio or a square aspect ratio or even a portrait aspect ratio. I have scripts that do it where I can just literally hit 75 millimeter, and it's going to put in the correct numbers to get me a 75 millimeter lens, but we're going to do it manually. So let's just go ahead and undo that, bring this back to default. I'm going to put on maybe a 75 millimeter lens, and that does not look like the same 75 that we had on there before. And that's because the field of view is incorrect. So the first thing I'll do is go back to my output and use a 16:9 aspect ratio. And now I'll set this field of view to 75. And I'm going to copy this field of view vertical, Control C. Now we'll go back in and grab our output, make it a square again. There you go. And now I'm going to grab that same camera and paste that field of view back in. And now we've got the correct lens. So my scripts just kind of do all of this behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about it. All right, so now let's go ahead and position our camera a little bit. We're going to back it out maybe the tad and bring our look at down to the center. And again, I like to use the composition tab in a camera and enable the grid just so I can see what I've got going on. And I'm just going to basically give myself enough segments to be able to center out our composition and figure out exactly how I want this to sit in the frame. So something like this is feeling pretty good. I think I might actually make our cylinder a little bit smaller just to make our sculpture feel more important. And I'm going to take the caps and tighten up that fillet a little bit. There we go. And let's give ourselves quite a few cap segments just so that there's no weird falling issues. All right, good. I'm not really vibing the rotation of this orb right now. And let's drop our orb into our foreground so we can keep our scene nice and organized. And our cylinder, that's considered a background object. Cool. All right, let's twirl these up. Okay, let's figure out exactly what we want the rotation to be. And from when I made the render, I do have those written down. I'm not going to like experiment with different ones because I really like the way that looks. So I'm just going to type these in. All right, there we go. Now I can lower this down and just have it touch the top a little bit, something like that. And what I like to do when I'm working on composition is I kind of like put my head back from my monitor and I kind of squint and I kind of see how it feels. And that's just a weird thing I do. I mean, you don't have to do that. It's really kind of up to you. I give myself a little bit more room. And I think I'll take my look at sort of like position this a little bit more in the center. Now I kind of want to get tighter. I think we're going to have our cylinder get back up to a decent size. So let's do 15. Let's do 14. All right, this is feeling pretty good. I'm going to turn off the grids just so I can see it a little bit easier. We're a little bottom heavy compositionally, so I'm going to raise it up a little bit. Feels pretty good. Okay, jumping back into my composition. Let's go ahead and look at the grid in rules of thirds here. I mean, I think I'm kind of ignoring them a little bit. It's such a unique sort of centered composition. I am gonna then, now that I'm looking at it, gonna take my orb and just kind of visually center it. Again, bringing my grid up to like something high so that I can sort of see this line and this line, and I can grab this and sort of center it out a little bit. And then we're gonna see how that feels. Cool. And for me, like I'm always tweaking this stuff. Like I feel like I'm never completely satisfied for what I want this to look like. But yeah, that's feeling pretty good. I think we've now got our basic scene built and we're ready to start moving into some lighting and maybe working in some simple shapes. Like I think I'll probably work with like a simple ground. In this case, we're going to lower it pretty far out of sight. And I'm just using like super generic shapes here. I'm not really doing a whole heck of a lot. I'm going to grab another plane. This one I'm going to put as our background, which is going to sit like somewhere back here, probably as a means to like catch light. I mean, it's so simple. And sometimes that's all you need for a shot like this. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You can kind of get away with a lot just by doing this sort of thing. Oops, hit the wrong one. Yeah, okay. So let's go ahead and start to tackle some of the lighting on this. Okay, we're ready to start lighting this thing up in Octane and using some Greyscalegorilla area light maps and yeah, just get it cooking. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and open up my render settings and choose Octane as my renderer. I'm not going to get deep into any of the settings in here, but we will be touching a lot of the Octane settings up here in the live viewer. Okay, so first things first, I've organized my scene. I do want to protect my camera from like bumping it or moving it. I could throw a protection tag on there, but it's all in layers, so I'm just going to come over to the layers and under cams, I'm just going to hit Control and click the lock, and it locks everything down. We'll unlock that in a second when we start to do some depth of field and bokeh and stuff, but for right now, that's totally fine. Opening up the Octane settings, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to flip this over to path tracing, and we're going to limit our path trace samples to maybe like 4,000 for the time being. GI clamp, I'm going to set that to like 10. We might increase that. We'll see what that does. This is basically going to like help clean up your renders, make them go a little bit faster. Let's see, what else am I going to do? Jump into Camera Manager, Custom LUT. So if you're a Greyscalegorilla Plus member, it's actually a really awesome thing to be a member of, because you're going to get all our materials, all our plugins, all of our assets, all that stuff. And soon we're going to be offering some new LUTs. And one of my favorite LUTs that we have, which is kind of a LUT that emulates ACES. I was going to get into the ACES workflow inside of Octane here. And if you want to see that video in a separate video, hit me in the comments and let me know. But for right now, we're going to be using a Greyscalegorilla Filmic LUT that is not out yet, that'll be available to Plus members soon. And this is kind of an emulation of ACES. So, all right, with that set up, let's jump into settings, environment, and make sure our default environment color is black, so we don't have anything there. So if we go ahead and hit go on this render, we should be seeing black. I'm going to hit the little lock icon here and change my scaling just so I can see it. Changed it to 0.5, making sure I'm in HDR sRGB, which is totally fine. And let's start playing around with some lights. Let's get some lights going in here. So jumping down, I'm going to give myself a little bit more room here. Let's do this and kind of get out. We'll grab an Octane area light. And with that area light selected, I have a nifty little set of scripts here that just rotate everything 90 degrees. So let's just flip that. There we go. Let's take that Octane light tag, flip these down, clean this up a little bit, and maybe set that to like 10. I'm not really going to worry too much about the materials just quite yet. I'm just going to kind of get some generic light going, and we will be throwing some area light maps on these lights. But you can see, just like from a lighting perspective, throwing a softbox on top here is an interesting look, but it's just not that interesting. So sometimes just by taking the light and pushing it in front of the subject a little bit, you get a little bit more of a different effect where the light is more raking off the front of the object. And I'll just make this a little bit even more apparent just by rotating this light just a little bit further towards that front ground. Remember, we put in some really generic ground and background, which isn't really going to show up in our shot. It's just mostly there to provide bounce and like give a sense of scale, a little bit of sense of scale, not much. And let's move our background back a little bit, and we'll take our fake ground, and scale it up until it kind of meets that. All right, cool. But just that little bit of bounce back there gives me a little something. So our second light, and we are only going to be using 2 lights in this scene. It's really, really simple. Let's grab our first light, and we're just going to control click and drag a copy of it over. And this one, I'm going to rotate and point a little bit more towards the back wall. I want to get some separation between our glass orb and the background wall. So I'm going to kind of do this, and I might raise it up. And we're going to move these lights around a little bit to catch more reflections in a minute. But for right now, I think this is kind of getting us a little bit of the way there. I might raise this up a little bit. Background. And again, we can adjust all these things on the fly. I am going to add some depth of field just because it's going to help me understand how I want to approach the lighting on this. So going back into layers, going to unlock my camera layer, grab the look at, grab a Octane camera tag, jump into the attributes, and we're going to change my f-stop to like 4. And I could come over here and hit the focus and hit the little thing, and like it'll put the focus wherever I want, but I kind of am old school, and I like to just make a null and call it like focus. And then I usually give it a display shape of a triangle, and I make it kind of small. And from there, let's just move it out in front. And you can see now we've got our little triangle, and this is what we're going to be using to focus. So we'll grab our camera. Under the object, we're going to drag our focus into the little focus object area. And now we have a nifty, I also like to make it yellow just because I'm crazy like that. And it kind of says focus to me. I don't know why. Let's just do that. All right, cool. So now we can kind of place the focus where we want it, and it's going to be locked there. Right about there. Cool. And I might have a slightly, yeah. So now we're blurring out that like seam of the background hitting the wall, and it feels just a little bit more photographic already. I'm digging that. All right, so let's drop in a glass material and get the glass material going. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to grab a universal material, which is my favorite Octane material, and let's apply that directly to our orb, and immediately it becomes metallic. Because for whatever reason, I don't know why, but Octane's universal material just assumes that you want to start with metal. I don't, so I'm going to grab the Octane universal material, go under the metallic tab, turn that down to 0. From there, I'm going to bring transmission, looks like we're doing an autosave, all the way up to white. And you may notice that the entire object stays white. It's not actually turning to glass. I need to take my albedo and bring it down to black. And now we have some nice glass going on. It's not perfect yet. Obviously, we haven't put any sort of textures or area light maps onto our Octane lights, but we're getting closer. Let's grab a medium. I'm going to pull that out and grab an absorption medium. And then from the absorption medium, under absorption, I like to use a Gaussian spectrum. Now, I know you're probably saying, well, why didn't you just grab an RGB spectrum? I don't know. I just kind of like it. I kind of like doing it this way. I feel like, I don't know, it just feels, it's cooler, all right? Don't hate. All right, so let's bring the density down on this glass to maybe like 40, somewhere in there. I want to try to get like a nice kind of thick Coke bottle-y kind of glass going on. And this is doing pretty well for me. I'm really liking it so far. I think I need to balance my lights a little bit, and we need to get materials on everything else, but let's just go ahead and do that really quickly here. I'm just going to turn off this light and just try to position this light a little bit better by rotating it a bit. Just want to kind of barely feel it onto that surface there. And maybe I need to move it this way a little bit. Just trying to get like a little bit of a highlight. This is going to help us when we get a texture on here. And then I'm going to flip these around and look at just that backlight. We might raise this up a little bit. I want to see if I can get that to happen. Move our background a little bit closer to that light. I'm actually going to scale this light up a little bit more. That's feeling better. All right, let's get our original light back in. Everything's just like playing around to see what feels right. Okay, that's feeling pretty good. Let's do some area light map stuff on that. So let's go ahead and turn off that light, and let's jump out of our camera because I want to show you from a different angle what we've got cooking here. And again, this is just so simple. It's so incredibly simple, but it's effective with the right angle. All right, so with that light on, let's grab a HDRI link tag under the lights, Octane lights tag. Let's grab texture and throw this into our HDRI link tag, which immediately is going to load in the default, which is not the one I want. So I'm going to look in the Plus library. If you haven't checked out Greyscalegorilla Plus, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic subscription. You get all of our assets, all of our plugins, everything Greyscalegorilla, all of our training for one price a month, or you can pay annually. It's up to you. Go under HDRIs here, and I'm going to use our new Area Light Maps Volume 2. Let's change our size to small. And let's throw in a nice softbox grid, which is just going to give us, going to break up the highlight on that guy a little bit nicely. It's feeling pretty good. Now I want to bring that intensity up to maybe like 4. Maybe we go a little higher. And we can see it right in here. You can see it in that glass, and it just provides just a little bit of that gallery vibe, which I really like. And okay, that one's feeling pretty good. We might bring the intensity up, but we'll check it in a sec. Let's grab the other light, another HDRI link tag, grab the Octane light tag, grab texture, throw it onto the tag. Again, opening up the library. With that tag selected, select the same grid softbox, and you can see again, now we've got some more interesting highlights. It's not just like a white blob, which is great. It's what we want. Now we need to bring that intensity up though. And let's jump back out of our camera. Take a look at that light. I might want to use, might want it to be linear. Yeah, I'll do the same thing to this other one. Now let's jump back into our camera. Cool. Now we can bring this intensity way down. Maybe not that far. Actually, that's not too bad. All right. We're even getting some pretty nice looking caustics down here. Okay. That one's pretty good. Let's turn this front one on. That front one's a bit bright. So let's bring that back down to like somewhere like in here. Good. I might add one more light to just sort of, actually, I think what I might do instead is sort of directionalize this guy and sort of pull him off to one side a little bit. It's looking pretty good, just giving it a little bit more direction by pulling that light over to the side. And you can see just like we're getting like so much more interesting looking highlights on our object just by using area light maps. And of course we could try different ones if we wanted to. In this case, you could go simple and do something maybe like with just a straight up softbox, which is totally fine. Or you could do one of maybe these grid arrays, which is interesting and could kind of, if we boost the intensity, probably have to boost it quite a bit. You can see we're getting multiple highlights, like maybe this is the inside of like a warehouse with a bunch of hanging fluorescents. I don't think this is really what I would do for this one, but one that might look interesting is Sparkle, which is kind of a crazy one. Just grab the tag and Sparkle. This one probably is going to give us a ton of fireflies because it's just basically a bunch of tiny little point lights in this map. We could also do like a Quasar, which is interesting. Not really something that you would see in a gallery setting like this, so it's not really going to work. So I'm just going to go back to the original. I might try a more complicated one. Grid softbox here. That's not too bad. Maybe we'll use that one. Bring the intensity down a little bit. Something like that. And again, once we get a material on here, we can really kind of figure out what that's going to look like. Okay, so we've got our glass looking pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is add a few objects inside, which I think would look cool. So let's go ahead and just drop in a sphere. And first of all, let me just incrementally save and let that do its thing. All right, so let's grab the sphere, give it like 60 segments and maybe like 10. Maybe it's more like 7. That. And I'm just going to place some of these spheres into our sculpture. And I'm going to kind of position them in ways that just kind of look interesting. I'm just kind of like pushing and pulling them around a bit. See what we can do here. Maybe this one's going to be like over here, up, out, maybe a little bit. I'll scale it down. I'm just going to kind of loosely position these around to where I think it looks interesting, because these are going to provide just a little bit of more texture to the image. Something like that, where it feels like maybe it's pushing out. And I'll grab a Octane Universal material and toss it on both of these. And we'll name these materials shortly, but let's jump into here, grab the active material. Let's make the metalness down to 0, and the albedo is going to be like 0.1, maybe 0.05, 0.02. So I want these to be kind of black. Maybe like 2. And I'm going to go ahead and pause this and place a few more of these into our shot so it looks kind of more interesting. So I'll come back. Okay, so I added some more spheres and I tweaked the lighting a little bit. I think it's probably worth showing you what I did. I brought my front light off to the side a little bit to get a little bit more directional stuff going on, and I made it feel a little bit more backlit by bringing that backlight up a little bit in intensity and bringing it closer to my wall. And this is feeling pretty good. I'm seeing a nice area light maps reflection in our scene still, and I'm getting some pretty good results off the glass. I'm feeling it. I might play with the glass a little bit, but for right now, I just want to put a texture on this pedestal thing right here. So under the plus library, which again, check out Greyscalegorilla Plus if you haven't already, I'm going to search for pitted, and I'm just going to bring up our pitted concrete. And I've already got 2 in the scene, but let's just go ahead and delete those 2 and grab this one. And we're going to throw this onto our pedestal. So just doing that. And I don't want it to be made out of concrete, but I do want that pitted material in there. I want to look at that. So I'm just going to make my render 100% here and grab my region. And we're just going to region off this little area here. And with the pitted concrete selected, let's jump into the node editor. And let's just take a look at what we got going on here. So I really just want to make this almost white. So I'm going to grab a mix material or a mix node here, and we're going to drag this into there. And in here, we're going to grab a RGB spectrum, and we'll throw this into our albedo. And we're just mixing the concrete texture out of it and putting white in there. And again, I don't want this to be 100% white, but something like this. Now we're just going to repeat that texture a few times. So with that top one selected, grab UV transform, plug this into all of them. So we get the same transform across the board here. And maybe like 1.5, oops, wrong way, 0.5, something like this. I just want to feel it more than see it. And the mapping isn't quite what I wanted, but I think I need to like actually increase it on Y a little bit. Something like in there feels pretty good. And again, maybe it's too far. Okay, that's feeling good. All right, so I'm going to mix this down even further to get that color in there more than the... I just want to see like the divots, the like little pits in there. I'm going to bring my power of my thing up just so I can see them a little bit better. Maybe bring some of that texture back. That feels pretty good. Now I'm just going to bring the intensity of this normal way, way, way down. It's more about like sort of feeling that it's there than seeing that it's there. And I'm also going to throw a little bit of speck in here. And we're going to roughen it way, way up. Making sure my IOR is 1.5. Yep, cool. Just a little bit of that sheen on there is good. Can even turn on a sheen layer just to, if you haven't tried this yet, it's pretty useful for getting a nice little Fresnel sheen going on. Just makes that surface look a little bit more rough. Almost like it's like plaster or painted plaster or something. All right, jump back out to like a 0.5. Make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. It's also going to help us give us a little sense of scale too, just having something going on down here rather than just having it be completely flat. Actually bring this up a little bit because it's a little hard to see. And maybe just a little bit more of that texture coming through. Yeah, this is feeling good. I might take some more time to like finesse the mapping on this cylinder and maybe get the UV mapping to be perfect. But for this demo, I think it looks pretty good. All right, so the next thing I want to do is like throw some layered stuff happening in this glass because this glass is interesting, but I think we could make it look a little cooler even still by adding like a composite material to this. Okay, let's jump into that section. Okay, so next thing I want to do is try to get some layered material stuff going on in this glass to make it a little bit more interesting. And the way I'm going to do that is through an Octane composite material. So let's go ahead and drop down a Octane composite material. Let's rename this one Layered Glass. And in my current glass right now, I'm just going to copy these two items. And under layered glass, we're going to create, we're going to say add material. And in this material, we're going to change it under the basic tab from material type glossy to universal. And from there, we're going to set the transmission. We'll have to plug a value into that. But for now, let's actually just do that. That's a thing that I wish it would do for you, which is a little annoying, but that's fine. We can just drag in here, grab a float, and change this to 1. And we'll change our albedo to 0, and our metalness is already there. And then our medium, we're going to set to another, actually we can just paste. Duh, we just grabbed it, paste that right into our medium, and move that down there. Okay, cool. So let's throw this into our glass and turn off the other material and resend that. So basically what we're doing is we're just going to be layering our material in here the way that we want. I think I'm going to use some MSMC materials and some mats and stuff for this. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. First thing I'll do is jump over to the plus library and let's just search for gold. And I'm going to grab this gold right here, which is going to be kind of a very bumpy gold. And then I'm also going to grab one of our patterns. And I think I'm going to do a striped pattern. So let's do this one. Double click that. Okay. So in our Octane node editor, first thing I want to do is grab the mat from this, which is going to be right here. So let's grab that, copy, jump into our layered, paste that down. So now we've got some stripes going on. And then I just need to grab this gold bumpy material. And we'll go ahead and zoom out a little bit, grab all these, copy, jump back into our layered glass, hit paste, move this stuff to the side. Oops. Oh, gosh. Okay. Man, sometimes these nodes are just tricky. A little annoying. Okay, so this will be going into layer 2. Actually, what sucks is like you can't, this is a pet peeve of mine. You can't just plug in an existing material in here. You have to actually have to grab the material and say add material and then come over and make it into a, I guess in this case, it's going to be a universal. And we're just going to steal these maps from here, put this into our albedo, and this is going to go under metallic. And this one is going to go under roughness. And then this bottom one, which is the most important one, is going to be going into normal. Okay. Cool. And we'll grab our stripe texture that we had. We'll put that into our material mask. And now we have some stripes going on. But it's not exactly what we want. We want to kind of repeat these a little bit more. So let's go ahead and drop down a UV transform. We'll clean all this up in a second, but for right now, this will be good. And maybe we want that to be like 0.2. Kind of interesting, leaving it kind of in this diagonal pattern. I'm actually kind of liking this. The mapping just kind of worked out that way. It wasn't anything that I had planned. I was actually thinking I might do a triplanar. But one thing is for certain is that this is happening not only, this texture is being mapped not only on the outside of our glass, but also on the inside, which gives us this weird like doubling effect, which isn't what we want. So let's drop down a ray switch. Okay, so this ray switch, I'm going to put this texture into the camera ray and into the shadow ray and into the diffuse ray, and even into the reflection ray. We're going to leave it out of the refraction ray, and I don't really care about the AO ray. So if I put this in here now, it's going to turn completely yellow because I need to throw a value into the refraction. So let's go ahead and throw down a float and make this float 1. Or no, I believe it's going to be 0. Yeah, 0. So basically what I'm telling Octane to do is use this material or use this texture, this striped JPEG, anywhere that's a camera ray, shadow ray, diffuse ray, reflection ray. And in the refraction rays, which is going to be anything showing through this glass, use 0. So it's not going to display any of that. Now this is looking pretty good. I'm not too sure about the pattern. I might try a different pattern. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly here. Let's go ahead and navigate and just see what patterns we have. Might be interesting to do. I know there's like more of a straight. There we go. This one I think will be more interesting looking. Yeah, that's kind of cooler actually. Or we might try like a speckled pattern. I think we have one in here. Let's see. Try this one. Speckled pattern's kind of cool. It kind of looks like gold dust or something. Again, I might do like a triplanar on here to get a little bit more interesting mapping. Just let this cook down for a minute. Yeah, I think the stripes are more interesting. I'm going to go back. But there are some other stripes in here, like these wood detailed ones are kind of fun. Ooh, I like that one. I think I'm going to use this one. Just gives us a little something something going on. And while I'm looking at the whole image, I am going to bring my foreground light down a little bit more. Give us a little bit more of a backlit look. I'm going to change my framing too because I'm so indecisive. I can never sort of decide on what I want to do. Let's see. Just a bit. Cool. Yeah, you know, I kind of like that stripe pattern that we had in there better. Let's see what like a wavy pattern looks like. Oh, I kind of like that. I even kind of like it big like that. All right, so let's go ahead and knock this down a little bit more. Give us a little bit tighter pattern. Cool. And the last thing I'm going to do is just like throw a little bit of bloom in here. Nothing too crazy. So I'm just going to post, enable the bloom, and let's just bring the bloom power way up just so I can see the effect that it's going to do. Give it a little bit of a cutoff. So I'm just kind of in the final stages of tweaking of this. So I'm waiting for Octane to catch up here to what I was just doing. Come on. All right, looks like it caught up. Maybe. Okay, so cool. All right, so I want to just like brighten up that backlight a little bit more. And then I'm going to give my bloom an insane amount of power. I feel like the bloom isn't really showing up right now. There it is. It's just very, very, very faint. Cut off down. I'm gonna like make it heavy-handed, and then we're just gonna walk it down. So without it, with it. Just a tiny, tiny bit of atmosphere. All right, this is feeling pretty good now. I like to sometimes zoom way out just to see how it's feeling. And now we can have some fun. We could even start changing the absorption color of our glass to something else. Maybe we want to adjust the density. And maybe we want to like go kind of warm with it. or maybe we want to go like more cool with it. Kind of digging this vibe. If we went really thick, it's kind of interesting too. Of course, with that, you could like go super far, but I kind of don't like that. I also don't like that color anymore, so I think we've got to bring more blue back into it. Like this, and let's bring our density back down to like 80 where we had it. Yeah, this is feeling good. I'm vibing on this. Yeah, so you can, just have fun experimenting with different textures and play around with it, get the lighting right. But yeah, that about wraps it up. There's not really much else I would do to this other than just play around with maybe different patterns and different textures and whatnot. But Plus members, Greyscalegorilla Plus members, hit me up and we'll give you the scene file and let you play with it and mess around, see what you can make with it. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. All right, that's it. So yeah, it's been a while since I did a tutorial on Octane, and I gotta say, I've been really enjoying it. They've been fixing a lot of stuff. 2020.2 has just been really stable for me, so I've been digging it. Probably gonna use it a lot more. So if you haven't checked out Greyscalegorilla Plus, please consider it. It's a subscription to all of our Greyscalegorilla stuff, materials, assets, plugins, everything you can imagine. We've got it there for you to help you work faster, do better renders, all that fun stuff. Also, if you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing and give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and I will see you in the next one. The bird is like crazy loud. All right. So loud. I'm gonna have to get like a broom and like. If you're a Greyscalegorilla Plus member, I'm gonna get you the scene file over in GSG Connect, our internal. I had a good run going. Hey, if you end up using this render as like an NFT, give me like 15-20%, huh? Just be cool about it. Be cool.